You thought you'd seen every twist Love and Hip Hop Atlanta could throw your way, but just when fans believed the storm had finally settled, one shocking revelation ripped the calm wide open. The internet is on fire tonight, emotions are running sky high, and at the center of it all stands Rasheeda, phone in hand, eyes blazing, ready to expose what she claims nobody was ever meant to see. Fans are shocked, jaws are dropping, and the question burning through every timeline is simple: did Kirk really cross the line again, and did Jasmine help him do it? It all started with a single notification, a buzz, a glance, and then silence, the kind of silence that comes right before everything explodes. According to this fabricated, over-the-top drama playing out in the Love and Hip Hop universe, Rasheeda allegedly stumbled upon a trail of text messages that sent her heart racing and her trust spiraling. Messages that weren't meant for her, messages filled with late-night confessions, coded emojis, and words that blurred every boundary a marriage is supposed to have. As Rasheeda scrolled, the air reportedly grew heavy, and fans swear you could almost hear the betrayal crack through the screen. Meanwhile, Kirk, always confident, always smooth, had no idea that his past was about to collide with his present in the most public way possible. And Jasmine? Her name alone was enough to reignite old wounds, reopen scars that never fully healed, and remind everyone of a chapter the family desperately tried to close. Emotions ran high as whispers spread through the cast, friends picked sides, and the family was left divided before a single confrontation even happened. What makes this moment even more explosive is the timing. Just when Rasheeda thought she had rebuilt trust brick by brick, just when fans believed growth had finally won over chaos, these alleged messages threatened to undo it all. Was this innocent conversation blown out of proportion, or proof of something far darker? And why now? Why resurface when the wounds were barely stitched closed? As word spreads, reactions pour in from every corner. Friends are stunned, critics are ruthless, supporters rally behind Rasheeda, praising her strength while bracing for the fallout. Screenshots are rumored, receipts are teased, and the stage is set for a confrontation that could shatter relationships beyond repair. Because this isn't just about texts. It's about trust, it's about history, and it's about what happens when secrets refuse to stay buried. Buckle up, because once Rasheeda hits play, nothing in Love and Hip Hop Atlanta will ever be the same again. The room felt smaller the moment Rasheeda sat down on the couch with her phone clenched tight in her hand. The glow from the screen reflected in her eyes as if it was daring her to keep reading. Every swipe felt heavier than the last, and somewhere deep down she already knew whatever was waiting at the end of that message thread was going to change everything again. She whispered to herself that maybe she was overthinking, maybe it was nothing, but the pit in her stomach told a different story. The kind of instinct only comes when trust has been tested too many times before and survived by the thinnest thread. Earlier that day, Kirk had been unusually calm, too calm, laughing a little louder than usual, offering compliments that felt forced, like he was trying to stay 2 steps ahead of something he hoped would never catch him. Rasheeda noticed it immediately because after years of ups and downs she had learned his patterns. When Kirk got nervous he got charming, and that charm had once again set off silent alarms in her head. Fans watching from the outside would later say the signs were all there, but in that moment Rasheeda was still trying to convince herself that growth was real, that the past was the past, and that they had earned a fresh start. The first message wasn't explosive, it was subtle, almost harmless, a simple "Hey you good" sent late at night. The timestamp alone made Rasheeda pause. Her thumb hovered over the screen as memories flooded back. Nights spent alone wondering where Kirk really was, conversations she thought they had buried long ago. She scrolled again, and that's when the tone shifted. Laughing emojis, inside jokes, references that didn't belong to a casual conversation, and then a message that made her heart drop. "You know you can always talk to me no matter what." Rasheeda exhaled sharply, the air thick with disbelief, because she recognized that tone, that intimacy that was not how a married man spoke to just anyone. As she kept reading, Jasmine's name felt louder with every line. It wasn't just what was said, it was what wasn't said. The pauses, the familiarity, the comfort. Fans are shocked because the story everyone thought had ended was quietly rewriting itself in real time. Rasheeda leaned back, her eyes closed for a moment as if she could rewind everything to before she picked up that phone. But once the truth starts unfolding, there is no unseeing it. Later that evening, Kirk walked into the house unaware that the walls were about to come crashing down. He tossed his keys on the counter and greeted Rasheeda with a casual smile. "Hey babe, you good?" She looked at him long and hard before responding, her voice steady but cold. "Yeah, I'm good." Kirk froze for half a second because he knew that tone too, the one that meant a storm was coming whether he was ready or not. "What's wrong?" he asked, stepping closer, but Rasheeda stood up, creating distance. Without saying a word, she held up her phone, the screen facing him. Kirk's smile faded instantly, his eyes darted from the phone to her face, back to the phone again, like a man searching for an exit that didn't exist. You wanna tell me why Jasmine is texting you at 2 in the morning? Rasheeda asked, her voice low but sharp. Kirk swallowed hard and ran a hand over his face before responding. It's not what you think, he said quickly. They were just conversations, nothing crazy. Rasheeda laughed, but there was no humor in it, just pain laced with exhaustion. That's funny because it looks real crazy to me, she fired back, her hands shaking now as the emotions she had been holding in finally surfaced. Emotions ran high as Kirk tried to explain, talking about checking in, being cordial, being there as a friend, but every excuse sounded thinner than the last. Friends don't talk like this, Kirk, she snapped, scrolling through the messages and reading them out loud, each word echoing through the room like a confession. You miss me? I've been thinking about you. I wish things were different. Kirk tried to interrupt, but Rasheeda held up her hand. Don't, she said firmly. Don't you dare try to talk over me right now, because I gave you space, I gave you trust, and this is what you did with it. The family was left divided in that moment because while Kirk insisted there was nothing physical, the emotional betrayal cut just as deep. Word spread fast, as it always does in their circle. By the next day, friends were calling, producers were whispering, and fans were already speculating without even knowing the full story. Rasheeda confided in a close friend, her voice cracking as she admitted how tired she was of being strong all the time. I feel stupid, she said quietly, like I keep choosing to believe him, and every time something like this happens it makes me question everything. Her friend reminded her that setting boundaries wasn't weakness, that demanding respect was not asking for too much, but Rasheeda couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a crossroads again, one that looked painfully familiar. Meanwhile, Kirk was on the defensive, calling anyone who would listen, trying to control the narrative before it spun out of his hands. He insisted the messages were taken out of context, that Jasmine had reached out first, that he was just being polite, but politeness doesn't require secrecy, and Rasheeda knew that better than anyone. Fans are shocked watching the tension build because every time Kirk spoke, his words only seemed to deepen the cracks instead of sealing them. Jasmine, for her part, stayed quiet at first, and that silence spoke volumes. Social media lit up with theories, accusations, and heated debates. People dissected every past interaction, every look, every moment that now seemed suspicious. Rasheeda watched it all unfold, feeling both exposed and vindicated, because while the public noise was overwhelming, it also confirmed that she wasn't crazy, that what she felt mattered, that the hurt was real. Late one night, after hours of arguing and tears, Rasheeda sat alone in their bedroom, the house eerily quiet. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, searching for answers in her own eyes. How many times do I have to relearn the same lesson, she whispered to herself. The phone buzzed again, another message, another reminder that this story was far from over, and as she picked it up, her expression hardened, not with anger but with resolve, because this time she wasn't just reacting, she was preparing, and whatever came next was going to force everyone involved to finally face the truth they'd been avoiding. The buzz from the phone felt louder in the silence. Rasheeda stared at the screen for a long moment before finally unlocking it, half expecting another message from Kirk, another excuse, another attempt to soften what had already broken, but instead it was a notification from a group chat her friends had created without Kirk included. The messages were pouring in fast. Did you see what people are saying online? Are you okay? We're here for you. Rasheeda closed her eyes and let out a slow breath, because suddenly this wasn't just her pain anymore. It was public, it was dissected and debated by strangers who felt entitled to opinions on a marriage they only saw through edited scenes and headlines. The next morning, the tension in the house was unbearable. Kirk tried to act normal, pouring coffee, flipping through his phone like nothing had changed, but Rasheeda could feel the distance between them like a wall neither of them knew how to climb over. She finally broke the silence. I need the whole truth, Kirk, not your version, not excuses, the truth. Kirk looked at her, his jaw tight, his confidence nowhere to be found. What do you want me to say? He asked quietly. Rasheeda met his eyes and didn't blink. I want to know why, after everything we've been through, you thought it was okay to open that door again. Kirk rubbed his temples, clearly frustrated because the narrative was slipping from his control. I told you it wasn't like that, he said, raising his voice slightly. She's going through stuff and she reached out. Rasheeda laughed again, that same hollow sound that echoed through the room. Funny how it's always someone going through stuff when you decide to be there for them, she shot back. Fans are shocked, watching the emotional disconnect play out, because Kirk still didn't seem to understand that intent didn't erase impact. By midday, the situation had reached Jasmine, and when she finally spoke, it only added fuel to the fire. She sent a message claiming she never meant to cause problems, that Kirk had been supportive and kind. Rasheeda read it in disbelief. Supportive and kind, she repeated out loud. Those words hit harder than any insult because they implied a closeness that never should have existed. Kirk tried to intercept. Don't respond, he urged, but Rasheeda was past being managed. She typed back, carefully choosing honesty over rage. Boundaries matter, she wrote, and you crossed one whether you meant or not. The fallout spread fast. Friends picked sides, some urging Rasheeda to walk away, others encouraging counseling, forgiveness and patience. The family was left divided as even Kirk's relatives weighed in, reminding him of everything Rasheeda had stood by him through. One family member pulled him aside, telling him straight up, "You're playing with fire and you're gonna lose her if you don't own this." Kirk nodded, but the words didn't seem to land because owning something means accepting consequences, and Kirk wasn't ready for that. That evening Rasheeda met with a close confidant, her voice trembling as she finally let the anger surface. "I'm tired of being the example of strength," she said, wiping away tears. "People praise me for holding it together, but nobody asks how much it costs to keep forgiving." Emotions ran high as she admitted she felt trapped between loving her family and loving herself. For the first time in a long while, she questioned whether those two things could still coexist. Back at home, Kirk scrolled through social media, watching the story spiral. Fans are shocked turned into fans are furious. Comments poured in, calling him out, dissecting his past mistakes, predicting Rasheeda's next move. Kirk felt cornered, and instead of reflecting, he lashed out, posting vague messages about being misunderstood, about people not knowing the whole story. Rasheeda saw it and shook her head, because even now he was performing instead of healing. Later that night, another argument erupted, this time louder, rawer. Kirk accused Rasheeda of embarrassing him. Rasheeda fired back, "You embarrassed yourself the moment you decided to entertain her." Kirk slammed his hand on the counter, denying any emotional affair, but Rasheeda stood firm. "Emotional loyalty matters just as much as physical," she said, "and I told you that before." The silence that followed was heavy because there was no argument against that truth. As the night wore on, Rasheeda packed a small bag, not because she was leaving forever but because she needed space. Kirk watched her, unsure whether to stop her or let her go. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice breaking. For the first time, Rasheeda paused at the door. "I'm going somewhere I can hear my own thoughts," she replied, and with that she walked out, leaving Kirk alone with the reality he could no longer avoid. And as the door closed behind her, the unanswered questions hung thick in the air, signaling that this chapter was far from over and that whatever came next would change everything yet again. Rasheeda sat in her car long after pulling away from the house, the engine idling as her hands rested on the steering wheel. Her chest rose and fell like she had just run a marathon. Leaving wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was heavy, the kind of decision that presses on your ribs and makes breathing feel like work. She stared out at the dark street, thinking about how many times she had promised herself she wouldn't be here again, and yet somehow history had found its way back to her doorstep wearing a different mask. Inside the house, Kirk paced from room to room, replaying the argument over and over in his head. Anger quickly gave way to fear because this time felt different. Rasheeda didn't cry, she didn't yell, she didn't beg, she walked away, and that scared him more than anything. He called her phone once, twice, 3 times, each call going unanswered, and with every ring his confidence chipped away. Emotions ran high as he realized control was no longer in his hands. Rasheeda eventually drove to a quiet hotel on the edge of the city, a place she had stayed before during long nights of touring and business trips. The familiarity brought small comfort as she checked in under her name, fully aware that by morning fans would probably figure it out. She sat on the bed, kicked off her shoes, and finally let the tears fall, not the dramatic sobs people expected from her, but silent tears, the kind that come from deep exhaustion. "I did everything right this time," she whispered to herself, "and still ended up here." By morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. Clips resurfaced, old interviews were reposted, and fans are shocked by how many red flags suddenly seemed obvious in hindsight. Rasheeda scrolled through comments, some filled with love and support, others blaming her for staying so long. She closed the app feeling exposed but also strangely empowered, because for once she wasn't rushing to protect Kirk from public opinion, she was choosing to sit with her own truth. Kirk finally reached Jasmine and demanded to know why she spoke up now, why she framed the messages the way she did. Jasmine snapped back, defensive and emotional, saying she never asked for this spotlight and that Kirk had made her feel safe enough to talk. Those words hit him hard because they echoed exactly what Rasheeda had accused him of, offering comfort where he shouldn't have. He realized too late that intent didn't matter when damage was already done. Later that day, Rasheeda met with her family, the room filled with tension. Before she even spoke, her mother looked at her with a mix of concern and disappointment, not at Rasheeda but at the situation repeating itself again. The family was left divided, some urging her to protect her marriage, others reminding her that patterns don't break unless someone breaks them. Rasheeda listened quietly, nodding, but making it clear that this decision had to be hers alone. When Kirk finally showed up asking to talk, Rasheeda didn't slam the door, she let him in, but the air between them was cold. He started apologizing, not with excuses this time but with visible regret. "I didn't think about how it would make you feel," he admitted. Rasheeda stopped him right there. "That's the problem," she said softly. "You never think about how it makes me feel until it's already too late." That truth hung between them, heavier than any accusation. He tried to promise change, therapy, transparency, cutting off communication, but Rasheeda asked a question that stopped him cold. Why did it take losing me for you to understand that boundaries matter? Kirk had no answer because there isn't one that fixes years of repeated mistakes. Fans are shocked watching this shift in Rasheeda, not angry, not reactive, but calm and resolute, a woman finally choosing herself. As the conversation ended without resolution, Rasheeda made it clear she needed time, not to punish him but to decide if forgiveness was still possible. Kirk left knowing that for the first time he couldn't talk his way back into her heart. The door wasn't closed, but it wasn't open either, and as he walked away he felt the weight of uncertainty settle in. That night, alone again, Rasheeda stood by the window looking out at the city lights, thinking about the woman she had been and the woman she was becoming. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: this chapter would not be written in silence anymore, and somewhere out there the next move was already forming, setting the stage for an even bigger reckoning still to come. The next morning brought no clarity, only more noise. Rasheeda woke up to missed calls, texts, and headlines, her name paired with words like betrayal, strength, and breaking point. Fans are shocked by how quickly the narrative shifted from speculation to certainty. Even without hearing her full side, she took a deep breath, reminding herself that silence was not weakness, it was strategy. She showered, dressed, and stared at herself in the mirror longer than usual, grounding herself before stepping back into a world that felt eager to pull her apart. Kirk, on the other hand, woke up desperate. He called his closest friend, trying to sound composed, but his voice cracked. "I messed up," he admitted, not in the way he usually did, not casually, not defensively, but with real fear. His friend didn't sugarcoat it. "You keep underestimating how much damage emotional stuff does," he said. "You think because it's not physical it doesn't count, but for her it always counts." Kirk went quiet because hearing it from someone else made it impossible to dismiss. When Rasheeda finally agreed to meet Kirk again, it was on neutral ground, a quiet office space away from cameras but not away from consequences. He arrived early, pacing, rehearsing apologies in his head. When she walked in, he stood up instinctively, then sat back down, realizing this wasn't the time for performative gestures. Rasheeda sat across from him, calm, unreadable, and that unsettled him more than anger ever could. "I read everything," she said, not raising her voice, not easing into it. "Everything?" Kirk nodded quickly. "Yeah, and I deleted the thread after because Rasheeda cut him off." "Don't tell me what you did after you got caught. Tell me why you didn't stop before it went there." Kirk opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing excuses wouldn't land. He finally said the quiet part out loud: "I liked feeling needed." Rasheeda flinched just slightly because honesty hurts more than lies. Sometimes emotions ran high in that moment, not in volume but in weight. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "So you liked feeling needed more than you cared about how it would make me feel?" Again Kirk shook his head. "No," but the words didn't help because the damage had already been done. Fans are shocked when this moment later gets described because it stripped the situation down to its core: insecurity, ego, and a pattern of seeking validation at the expense of trust. Outside that room, the ripple effects continued. Jasmine felt the heat. 2 messages flooded her phone, accusing her of being calculated, of knowing exactly what she was doing. She lashed out online, posting cryptic statements about being misunderstood, about telling her truth, but each post only intensified the backlash. The family was left divided, not just between Rasheeda and Kirk, but across the entire circle, people questioning loyalty, intent, and accountability. Rasheeda's children became a silent but powerful factor. She spoke privately with them, answering questions carefully, shielding them from the ugliness while acknowledging their feelings when asked, "Are you and Dad okay?" And Rasheeda paused, choosing honesty without burdening them. "We're working through things," she said, "and that work matters the most right now." Inside, she felt the familiar ache of wanting stability for them while refusing to sacrifice herself to maintain an illusion. Kirk tried to show effort, transparency. He offered passwords, schedules, access to everything, but Rasheeda stopped him. "I don't want to police you," she said. "I want to trust you, and right now I don't know if I can." That line became the unspoken theme of everything that followed. Trust wasn't broken by one message, it was eroded over time, and no quick fix could rebuild it overnight. Friends weighed in again, some applauding Rasheeda for standing firm, others urging reconciliation, reminding her of history, love, and family. But Rasheeda realized something important: love without respect becomes survival, not partnership. Fans are shocked hearing that sentiment because it echoed what many had been thinking but hadn't seen her articulate so clearly. Kirk, meanwhile, faced his own reckoning. His attempts to shift blame no longer worked. Every conversation led back to the same truth: boundaries were crossed. Intentions aside, he finally acknowledged it, publicly admitting he failed to protect his marriage. The response was mixed. Some appreciated the accountability, others called it too little too late. But for Rasheeda, the apology wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a longer, harder process. As days passed without a clear resolution, tension simmered. The silence between Rasheeda and Kirk became heavy, not hostile but uncertain. She focused on work, throwing herself into business meetings and performances, reclaiming pieces of herself that had been overshadowed by constant crisis. She felt stronger but also sad, because strength often comes from loss. One evening Kirk sent a message, simple and raw. "I'm scared of losing you." Rasheeda stared at it for a long time before responding. "Fear isn't enough. Change is." The message sent without punctuation, without softness, just truth. And as she put her phone down, she knew the next chapter would demand more than promises. It would demand proof, and whether Kirk was capable of that remained the question hanging in the air as everything continued to build toward an inevitable turning point still waiting just ahead. Rasheeda tried to keep her routine steady, but the quiet moments betrayed her. Every pause invited memories, doubts, and questions she couldn't outrun. She found herself replaying Kirk's message, "Fear isn't enough. Changes," and wondering if she believed he could actually do it, or if she was finally preparing herself to accept that some people only change when it's too late. Fans are shocked by how composed she appears publicly, because privately the weight of decision presses on her every waking hour. Kirk, on the other side of town, sat alone in an empty living room. The house felt unfamiliar without Rasheeda's presence, like a reminder of what he stood to lose. He started therapy not for show, not for redemption, but because he had run out of places to hide. The therapist asked him why he kept crossing lines he swore he understood, and Kirk struggled to answer without deflecting. When he finally said, "I like attention," it felt ugly and honest, and that honesty unsettled him more than denial ever had. Emotions ran high as he realized how many times he had chosen ego over empathy. Jasmine watched from the sidelines, feeling the heat grow hotter every day. Her attempts to clarify only deepened suspicion, and she began to feel used by the situation. She told a friend she never intended to be a wedge, but the friend pushed back. Intentions don't erase consequences. The family was left divided in a new way, now questioning Jasmine's role, not just in Kirk's choices but in her own boundaries. Jasmine felt cornered and angry, posting a final message about stepping back for her peace. The response was swift and unforgiving. Silence from her only fueled speculation. Rasheeda met with a trusted advisor who asked a simple question: "What does safety look like for you now?" Rasheeda thought hard, because safety used to mean staying together, keeping the family intact, but now safety felt like honesty, predictability, and respect, things she hadn't felt consistently in a long time. She admitted she was scared of both outcomes, staying and leaving, because both carried loss. Fans are shocked hearing her admit vulnerability without sugarcoating. Strength doesn't cancel fear, it coexists with it. A week passed with minimal contact, then Kirk asked for one more conversation, not to convince, not to plead, just to listen. Rasheeda agreed on her terms. When they met, he didn't rush, he didn't interrupt, he listened as she laid out the cumulative hurt, the nights of anxiety, the public embarrassment, the erosion of trust. With every small boundary crossed, she spoke slowly, deliberately, as if placing each truth on the table, and Kirk felt each one land heavier than the last. When it was his turn, he didn't promise forever, he didn't demand forgiveness, he acknowledged harm plainly. "I broke something important and I don't know if I can fix it, but I'm willing to do the work, even if it doesn't lead back to you." Rasheeda studied him, searching for performative cracks, but found none. That didn't magically heal her pain, but it mattered, because accountability without expectation is rare. Emotions ran high, not with shouting but with gravity. Outside their bubble, reactions continued. Fans are shocked, divided themselves, some cheering reconciliation, others championing independence. Debates raged about emotional cheating, boundaries, and growth. The family was left divided, two elders emphasizing commitment, younger voices emphasizing self-respect. Rasheeda absorbed it all but refused to let noise decide her life. She took a short trip alone, a reset. She needed space, without opinions, without reminders. She walked beaches early mornings, letting the rhythm calm her nervous system. She journaled pages of thoughts, confronting patterns, acknowledging her own role, not in Kirk's choices but in staying through repeated pain. She realized she had confused endurance with love and decided she would no longer audition for peace. Kirk used the time to continue therapy, cut off all non-essential contact, and faced uncomfortable truths about validation and control. He learned that secrecy was a symptom, not a mistake, and that boundaries weren't rules imposed by others but promises made to himself. He wrote letters he never sent, including one to Jasmine, taking responsibility without shifting blame. When Rasheeda returned, she felt clearer, not healed but centered. She asked for a pause, not a breakup, not a reunion, a pause to observe actions over time. Kirk agreed, understanding that patience was part of penance. They set boundaries, check-ins, transparency, not surveillance, and independent counseling. The terms were firm, not punitive. The quiet that followed felt different, steadier, uncertain, but honest. Rasheeda focused on her work, her joy, her friendships, rebuilding trust with herself first. Kirk focused on consistency, not grand gestures. Fans are shocked watching the slow burn of accountability, because drama thrives on explosions but growth moves quietly. Still unresolved questions lingered. Would time reveal true change or temporary compliance? Would Rasheeda choose partnership again or a new chapter alone? The family was left divided but hopeful that whatever the outcome it would be rooted in truth. As the days turned into weeks, the story pressed forward, not toward a neat ending but toward a reckoning shaped by choices yet to be proven, in a decision still forming just beyond the horizon, waiting for the final turn to arrive. And now here we are at the edge of it all, with more questions than answers and a story that refuses to settle into anything simple or comfortable. Rasheeda's strength, Kirk's accountability, Jasmine's silence, and the ripple effects that shook everyone connected to them. Fans are shocked because this wasn't just another headline or another argument. This was a slow emotional unraveling that forced every character to look in the mirror and decide who they really are when no one is cheering and no one is defending them. You've seen how emotions ran high without a single glass being thrown, how betrayal doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers through late-night texts and crossed boundaries. You watched a family left divided not by hate but by hard truths about loyalty, forgiveness, and self-respect. And now the biggest question still hangs in the air: what happens next? Does accountability lead to real change, or does history repeat itself with a new apology and the same ending? This is where you come in, because your voice matters just as much as the story you've been watching. Do you believe Kirk can truly change when the spotlight fades, or do you think some patterns are too deeply rooted to break? Was Rasheeda right to pause instead of rushing to forgive, or should marriage always mean fighting through no matter the cost? How do you feel about emotional boundaries? Do they count as much as physical ones, or even more? We want to know what you would do if you were in Rasheeda's position. Would you stay and wait for actions to match words, or would you choose peace even if it meant walking away from history, comfort, and familiarity? Would you accept accountability without guarantees, or does love require certainty? Tell us your thoughts, because this conversation doesn't end when the video does, it continues with you. If this story had you glued to the screen, if you felt the tension, the silence, the weight of every decision, then make sure you show it. Hit that like button, because it tells us you want more deep dives into the drama, the emotions, and the stories that go beyond surface level betrayal. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single update, because trust us, this saga is far from over and the next chapter could change everything all over again. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because when new details drop, when reactions surface, and when lines are finally drawn, you'll want to be the first to know. Drop a comment below and let it all out. Agree, disagree, call it how you see it, respectfully, passionately, honestly, because this is a space where real conversations meet reality TV chaos. Share this video with someone who's been following the story, someone who has opinions, someone who's lived through something similar, because sometimes these stories hit different when they feel close to home. And remember, drama may bring us in, but truth is what keeps us watching. So stay locked and stay vocal and stay ready, because love, betrayal, growth, and consequences never follow a straight line, and neither does this story. See you in the next one.